1 Corinthians 7 and verse 29 is where we are. I'm going to try to go to the 7th chapter. We've been talking about marriage, Paul's marriage counseling seminar, and have you liked that? Did you learn something with it? Did you learn something with this? The marriage counseling seminar? It's a whole lot different when you look at it from the Word of God and divide it correctly. When you divide it correctly. Dividing the Word of God correctly is extremely important. Because if you don't, you can go off into the left field or the right field or no telling where. All right? 729. We had a little pre-class testing tonight. You didn't ask me any questions, so I asked you questions. All right? Tuto. They. Pheme. Adelphoi. Ho. Kairos. Sinestalmenos. Eston. To. Loipon. Hina. Kai. Hoi. Ekontes. Ganekos. Hos. Me. Ekontes. Usen. By the way, if you've already signed up for the class, you don't have to pay anything for this period of time. If you've got your book and everything, we only have one book in this class. In our Hebrew class, we had 4 books so far, and so they say to give another $10 every time you get a book. That'll just cover the printing of the books. But here you don't owe anything. You're all paid up. All right? And as long as we're in the book of 1 Corinthians. And hopefully the Lord will let me finish this book. Hopefully. It starts out with a weak adversative conjunctive particle, page 85. That's that little word "day" there. It's actually the second word in the sentence, but that's where it begins. But this, demonstrative pronominal adjective. But this I say, and Paul uses a different word. What's the word? The usual word that he uses for "I say"? What would it be? What's the normal word for "I say"? Which one is it? What's the word? What's the Greek word for "I say" usually? You remember that one? Brother Randall, do you remember that word? Huh? No. I'll draw the picture of it, and then you'll know it. What is that? That's a bird out in the field picking up seed. All right, now what is it? Lego. Lego. Paul usually uses the word Lego, but here he uses the word pheme, all right, which is more of a statement, all right. But this I make as a statement, brothers, all right, adelphos. That means those of the same from the same womb. The season. Now this word is not chronos, which is time, but it is season. For this the season having been shortened. Paul thinks that the imminent return of Jesus Christ is right around the corner. So he has made a statement. Now, Paul keeps emphasizing to us that the statements that he's making here from up through verse 31 are what? That's a parenthetical statement. A parenthetical statement. And what did he say about it? He said, this is my what? My opinion. This is not revelation from God. This is my opinion. So you have to separate opinion from revelation, even though Paul wrote it down, and he said that I'm inspired by God. God's Spirit is inspiring me, but we know that the Lord didn't come back right here, did he? He didn't show up yet. And he hadn't shown up yet here. But we ought to live every day like he's going to be here today. We ought to live every day like he's going to be here today. Having been shortened, it is. Third person singular, present indicative active. That word, little word Eston there. If you want to write that down below that comes from Amy. The one remaining. This season that's remaining now. The season that's remaining. That's the season right before the coming of the Lord. He didn't understand this tribulation period. He thought that they were going to go through the tribulation period. They were very confused. A lot of time has come and gone since then, and we've seen a lot of prophecy fulfilled since the Apostle Paul wrote this letter, haven't we? Even we have the book of Revelation after this letter, don't we? He couldn't separate this. But the church. When Jesus died, and even when they rose again, they thought he was going to bring in the kingdom right then, didn't they? So what's going on? Why aren't you going to establish the kingdom? Now, you're here, you're the king, you're glorified and everything else. Where's the kingdom? We had a job to do, and we're doing it today. The ones remaining, in order that hina there, also the ones having wives as not having, they may be. Wives not having as they may. Penny, do you have that Amplified Bible right there? Could you bring that up here real quick for me, please? Can 729.
Okay. I mean, brethren, the appointed time hath been winding down and has grown very short. From now on, let even those who have wives be as though they had none.
All right. Even if you're married, act like you're not married. Don't make any plans for tomorrow or the next day. The Lord's coming back right away. That's what his story was. Okay? Just live like, don't count on making a fortune in the stock market. Don't make a lot of investments. Don't build big houses or whatever. Just get ready for the Lord. Live every day as if he's coming back right now. That's what he's saying. This idiom that he's talking about here goes all the way through verse number 31, okay? Let's go to 7 and 30 now. 7 and verse 30. All earthly relations are to hang loose in a view of Jesus' second coming. All earthly relations are just kind of be on a sketchy, non-permanent deal. That's Paul's opinion now, okay? This is Paul's opinion. Kai, hoi, kleontes, hos, me, kleontes, kai, hoi, kairontes, hos, me, kairontes, kai, hoi, agorazontes, hos, me, kata ekontes. Okay, here we go again. Paul's talking about here now. The ones weeping, not as weeping. The ones weeping, not as weeping. The ones rejoicing, not as rejoicing. Now the word weeping there is nominative plural masculine present participle acting, just like the rest of it. The ones weeping, not as you're weeping. The ones rejoicing, as not rejoicing. And the ones buying, as not holding. Don't buy anything and expect to make money on it right now. Don't do that. We don't have that much time. Don't buy something and plan. Don't go out and buy a whole lot of potatoes and plant them in the ground and expect the crop to come up. That's what Paul's talking about here. He said, don't go out and buy a bunch of cattle and expect to sell them off in 2 years. Fatten them up. Just live. Don't make any earthly. Don't get married, is what he said. He doesn't want them to get married. He wants them to be free and like pilgrims, free and nomadic, to go and to preach God's word all over the place. Well, we know that if everybody lived like that, they sure wouldn't have had any kids, would they? They sure wouldn't have established any homes. And there's nothing wrong. Hello, Brother John. There's nothing wrong with making money and trying to provide for your family. Now, I want you to understand this, okay? We're going to come back in just a minute. I'll have you read a couple of them. 7:31. 1 Corinthians 7:31. Kai, hoi, chromenoi, ton, cosmon, hos, me, kata, chromenoi, parage, dar, to, schema, tu, cosmu, tuto. When I went to that doctor's office up there at KMC the other day, they sent me up there to go talk to him so they could send me to UCLA to get medical help. When I sat down in there, and he said, what do you want me to do? You're dying. He said, you've been poisoned. He said, you got cancer, you got heart trouble, you got a tumor in your chest that could break at any moment, and you could be dead. And you're poisoned now. What do you want to do? Die of cancer a year from now? or this tumor or whatever else. And I said, "But see, that's when you don't know you got any time, okay? Every time I see you in this class, I look at each of your faces, and I love you, and I hold on to you, and I hug you, and kiss you, and shake your hands, and everything else, because I don't know whether I'm going to see you one more time or not. Because we don't know. See, I know that my time is short. If something doesn't happen, I don't have much time. I know that. But Brother Allen didn't the other day. Brother Allen Wagner. Brother Allen lived every day like it was the last day, I'm telling you. I mean, he made plans. That was one dynamo of a man. I mean it. I never saw anyone like him in my life. I was his pastor almost 40 years ago. That man was the greatest man of God that I've ever known, period, compared to anyone. Because he lived like, he's talking like Paul's living here. I remember he was going with one of the most beautiful girls that you could ever lay your eyes on, Martha. And he never told me this, but they were going together for quite a while, and I was a pastor talking to both of them and everything else. And Martha said, "That is such a great man that I am not worthy of him. I don't measure up to him. I just don't measure up." Well, they didn't get married. A lot of people didn't even know he ever went with anybody because he had his mind on the Lord. He was a missionary. He just did one thing after another. I mean, it was a constant dynamo of whatever. He lived every day, and then one day he went to sleep and he didn't wake up. Except in eternity. We don't know how much time we've got left. But we ought to live every day as if it's our last. We ought to live every day as if it's our last. And the ones using the world as not trying to use it up. Boy, that's Americanism, isn't it? Good old American way. Just wear it down to the last until there's nothing left of it. Use it down to nothing. Use it up. It means to use down to the last square inch. To use it up. To use it up. There's a new book out, actually a couple of new books out. I've taught you this in my Hebrew classes. The origin of the races and how the world was populated and how they went. I talked a lot about America and how tremendously this place was populated. There was over 100 million Indians here. Did you know that? Way over 100 million. They, when they came in here, but that they weren't conquered by the horses that they brought, nor the steel knives or the guns or anything like that. What they were conquered with was basically germ warfare. That's it. We know that. Now, this guy rewrote history called 1491 before Columbus came here and showed America as it was then. The Iroquois Confederation of Faith, the great politics among the Indians, total democracy from coast to coast in the North American continent. Total democracy. He went into that. Not using things up. It says when the Indian walked on the land, you could hardly tell he'd been there. He didn't use it up. But look at Europe. Look at Europe. Look at the Middle East. It was used up. Nothing left. At one time they said a tree could jump or a squirrel could jump in a tree in England, right on the coast of England, and go all the way to the Middle East and never hit the ground. Go from tree to tree. With all their wars, they had completely depopulated and deforested the whole world. I mean, the trees of Lebanon, you go out over there, by the time Israel got back in the land in 1948, there weren't any trees of Lebanon at all. They were gone. They weren't there. They've replanted a lot of those now. To use up, to use it all the way down. He said, this world's passing by. That's our para ago there. Third person singular, present indicative active. The world is passing by. The cosmos. That is the order of the world. The order of what? Who is the God of this world? Satan right now. He's the God of this world. It's his organization. If you don't believe it, just see what's going on around us today. Look at all the corruption in California with this oil business right now, this gasoline and oil corruption, political baloney. That's all it is. Schema, schema. What word in English do we have from schema? Huh? Well, kind of, sort of, yeah, a scheme. What would that one be? How many of you know anything about electronics? Huh? Schematics. Thank you, Brother John. A schematic. A schematic is a blueprint. We're not supposed to live according to the blueprints of the world. The blueprints of the world. Belonging to the world, this. And to this age, this. To this season, this. Rebecca, can you run up here with that little thing and read that for me real quick? Just read the last 3 verses where we started all over so we'll get a good look at it.
29. I mean, brethren, the appointed time has been winding down, and it has grown very short. From now on, let even those who have wives be as if they had none, and those who weep and mourn as though they were not weeping and mourning, and those who rejoice as though they were not rejoicing, and those who buy as though they did not possess anything, and those who deal with this world, overusing the enjoyments of this life, as though they were not absorbed by it, and as if they had no dealings with it. For the outward form of this world, the present world order, is passing away.
All right. Present world order is passing away. All of the schematic of the world, the schemes, young lady, like the scheme, Sharon, like the scheme, schematic of the world. The schemes of the devil. All right, the schemes of the devil. 732 now. 732. See, I'm remembering some of your names a little better. I mean, my brain may be being destroyed by mercury and arsenic, but I still get doing a little of it. Trying. Working on my nervous system, I can tell you that much. Thelo. Day. Himas. Amerimunus. Ene. Ho. Agamos. Mera. Ne. Ta, tu, Kyriou, pos, arese, to, Kyriou. But that's a little weak adversative conjunctive particle if you want to write down there, page 85, right below that. I left some of these blanks so you could do that. If you write that down enough, you'll remember it. Weak adversative conjunctive particle. Okay? But I say to you, and that's accusative plural, second person pronoun, that hemos. If you want to write that down, you'll see that it's in the objective case, the accusative. Without care, without anxiety, without it's used 2 times in the New Testament, by the way, this word is. Without care, without anxiety. Matthew 28 and verse 14 talks about it. The cares of this world do what to a child of God? What do the cares of this world do? Kind of get you sidetracked, doesn't it? The cares of the world can sidetrack you real easy. That's what Paul's talking about here, not getting sidetracked. Don't get married and everything else, because marriage will sidetrack you. You'll be wanting to take care of your wife or your husband and all that kind of stuff, and Paul said the Lord's coming back. Well, we know the Lord didn't come back in that generation. And some of them did get married because they were Baptists, born and died. All right? Without care, to be, N-A, present infinitive active. Ho agamos, the unmarried, the unglued. Gamos, we get our word gum, or a gum type thing. They used to use gum. Glues. The Indians used glue. How many of you ever had menudo? Anybody ever had menudo? Menudo is glue. Did you know that? It's glue. It's glue. What they used to do is it was cow feet and pig feet in it with tripe. All of that makes real good glue. It does. It's gelatin, but it's glue. This is what they used to glue guitars together with and violins together with in the old days. They'd take these horse feet and whatever else, cow feet, everything, pig feet, and they'd boil them and boil them and boil them. And when you set that up, it turns into a gelatin, doesn't it? I love menudo. I love menudo. Anyway, it'll make a gelatin. But if you take it, the Indians used to use that, and they would dip a feather in it. And they would fletch their arrows with this type of glue. They would have their arrow shafts, and they would run them through the little stones and straighten them up and everything else, and then they would take and tie them on with sinew and glue each feather down where it was going exactly, or it would turn a twist to make their arrow fly straighter. By the way, as we're going back to 1491, they talked about the guns that they had when they came over here and conquered the Indians with the guns. Indians could let fly with 20 arrows the time you shot one gun. The arrows would fly further and penetrate further than the guns would.
And 10 times more accurate.
Yeah. And they could do it real fast. Leaning underneath the neck of a horse and shooting that thing. Running at a full run. This old world's going to pass by. The unmarried, the unglued, the cares, the merry menage. This is where when you get up in the morning, Rebecca, you've got to think about 3 guys at least every day. Huh? Yeah, that's right. You've got to take care of those little guys. Yeah. When you get up, you've got to do that. Brother Bill had 2 girls. You had to, every morning when you got up back then, you had to think about them. Right now, you only got 1 girl to think about.
That's enough.
Yeah. I have had 3 children in my life, and I took care of them. Dakota, did I take good care of you to this day? Nearly every day she gets her breakfast cooked for her, and waited on hand and foot. That's just the way I did. You know, my grandmother waited on me like that. She taught me how to be a good daddy. She said, remember what I'm showing you. Remember that. Always remember that. We care. Every morning when we wake up, we care for one another. You do that. But if we didn't have anybody there, we could just think about what? The Lord. The Lord. There's good and bad about that. I don't think the Lord doesn't want you to get married today. Paul's opinion was back then, don't do that. But I'll tell you what, when you get married, Brother Randall, you won't have time to work on the website. When you get married, Brother Donnie, it takes a lot of money to support all those little mouths at home, doesn't it? Yeah. It takes time and money and energy. Okay? The cares for the things of the world, or of the Lord, that is, of the Lord. Then he has the word post here. He said, how he may please the Lord. We have a deliberate subjunctive with post here. Retained in an indirect question, by the way, grammatically. I thought I'd just throw that one at you. I don't know if you knew what it said or not. That's it. 733. Brother John, it's good to see you here all the way from Shafter. Missed you. Ho, day, gam mesos. Mary merimna. Ta, tu, cosmu, pos, arese, te, ginake. But the one having been married, or having married, he cares, he remembers. He remembers. He has to remember. When she pulls a bed blanket off of you on a cold night, you know it, don't you, Brother Bill?
Takes some cold feet to your butt.
Yeah, that's right. You know these things. You know this. Well, you remember. But having married, cares for the things of the world, this world system, how he may please the wife. All right, how he may please his wife. That's very important. You got to keep your wife pleased. If your wife's happy, the house is happy. If the wife's not happy, the world's unhappy. Okay? That's just the way it is. That's the way it is. Cares of the world. Cares can drag you down where you can hardly serve the Lord. 734. Kai. Memereste. Kai. Hey, Gene. I like the word, say the word Gene. Where you were taught it was Goonie, brother. I don't like to call a woman a Goonie. I never did like calling a woman a Goonie. It's Gyne. All right? Those German Greek scholars pronounce the Greek Gune. But it's not Gune, it's Gyne. And we get our word gynecologist from that. Okay? It's a Gyne. Just wanted to get you straightened out on that just in case, so you don't start calling your wife a Goonie. Okay, that doesn't work either. All right? And Kai he Gene, he Agamos, Kai, he Parthenos, Merimna, Ta, Tu, Kiriu, Hina, A, Hagia, and then Kai is in double brackets, so that's probably not there, but it is understood. To, Somati, Kai, To, Numati. And 734b. Hey, De, Game Sasa, Meri, Memna, Ta, Tu, Cosmu, Pos, Arese, To, Andre. And has been divided. All right, and has been divided. And the woman, the unmarried, and the virgin, Parthenos. All right? Now, the Hebrew equivalent of Parthenos is what? All you Hebrew scholars? There's two words in Hebrew for virgin. One of them means a sexually mature young woman, and sometimes it's translated virgin, but it really isn't. And then the other one is Bethulah. Bethulah and Alma. Bethulah is the one here. Bethulah is the woman that's kept in the house and guarded. Her virginity, her moral attitude is guarded. I had a friend that lived up in Nevada. He had a very beautiful daughter. And she was just a knockout. And he said that he had to go out when she got up to the age of beauty, when she came to her beauty, that he had to go out and put the bars and boards and nail them over her window. Guys were coming and slipping out the window with her. After she got old, he couldn't pay anybody to haul off with her. Beauty sometimes doesn't last very long. And she asked Daddy, she said, Daddy, how come I'm not pretty like I was? He said, you were once. He said, some never are. You were once. You were once. Very beautiful. A virgin that is guarded. Parthenos, or Bethulah, Mary Mene. She cares the things of the Lord, in order that the holy, both in the body and in the spirit, both in the body and in the spirit. What does it mean? The word holy here doesn't mean super sanctity. Here, it means, holy means not of earth, doesn't it? Not of earth. But here, what does it mean, holy? It means you're separated, set aside for the Lord. Okay? Separated and set aside in body and in spirit. When you have to give a lot of your divided attention to your family and to your husband, and as we studied here, as Paul gave us marriage seminar, when you're married, you sexually don't own yourself. You physically don't own yourself. You mentally don't really even own yourself. When you get married, you have sold out your privateness. You are no longer private property. You're the property of the other person. What?
Become a slave.
Oh, that it? You've sold out. You become a slave, all right? But the one having married, there that is a nominative singular feminine. This is the girl having been married. That's aorist tense. That's a participle. The one having been married. Nominative singular feminine, participle, first aorist and active. She cares for the things of the world, how she may please her man or her husband. That's very important. Pleasing your man and your husband. A wife has to please her husband, and a husband has to please her wife. A lot of people, they live divorced lives. They do. They live like they're divorced. They don't have a husband or wife. Paul the Apostle laid it on them earlier, didn't he? You don't live like that. You don't live like that. Now he's talking about people that aren't married. Rebecca, you want to come up here and read a couple of those last one and catch us up to where we are? I think, was it 31? Yeah, all right.
My desire is to have you free from all anxiety and distressing care. The unmarried man is anxious about the things of the Lord, how he may please the Lord. But the married man is anxious about worldly matters, how he may please his wife. And he is drawn in diverging directions. His interests are divided, and he is distracted from his devotion to God. And the unmarried woman or girl is concerned and anxious about the matters of the Lord, how to be wholly separated and set apart in body and spirit. But the married woman has her cares centered in earthly affairs, how she may please her husband.
And her family, and her children, everything. It doesn't mean that a woman can't be godly that's married. What he's saying, he said, I would rather, my opinion is, don't get married if you want to serve the Lord. If you really want to serve the Lord, just spend all your life doing it like Brother Alan Wagner did. That's like I said, he had a fiancée one time. I pastored both of them. But he spent his life in the things of the Lord. I'll tell you what, he was only 56 years old, but that man lived 150 years in that 56 years. It like had 10 people going. Thank you. 735. Tuto, they, pros, to, himon, auton, sim, foron, lego, uk, hina, broxon, hemen, epibalo, alla, pros, to, euske mon, kai, eupara deron, to, kyrio, apo, aperispastos. Some pretty hard words to say. But this for the of ye yourselves an advantage. This word seem foron is used 2 times in the New Testament, 10 and 33 in verse here. It means for an advantage. For an advantage, I say. Not in order that as a restraint or a manacle or handcuffs to ye, I may put on. Look at that word epibalo. Epibalo. Rebecca, you were raised on a farm, weren't you, kind of? Did your dad ever go lasso something? You never had to lasso anything. Yeah. Just about on a farm, you just about got a lasso. Brother Dick, did you ever have to lasso anything? Brother Mike, you get around like that? Brother John, am I the only cowboy around here with me and Rebecca? Well, I could really throw a lariat. I could ride a bronc and I could throw a lariat. I could ride a bronc and throw a lariat at the same time. I was up in Nevada one time and at the foreman of the Cord Ranch where the Cord, Duesenberg, and Auburn's were built, you know, that guy that E.L. Cord, Everett Loban Cord. I worked for him up there one time, and an old Robbie was out there, and these young kids were out there practicing throwing a lariat. And he was out there, and he said, you any good at throwing a lariat? And I said, well, I used to throw a lariat. Brother Bill, you threw a lariat, didn't you? Anyway, so he said, well, throw this on him. He said, rope the horns on that cow right there. And I went, just like that, and slapped it right around there. And he says, you did that before. You did that before. I can tell that right now. You did it before. Roping cows is about twice as hard as roping steers, and roping goats is real hard. Now, I probably just said something. You know what I'm talking about, roping goats. They can dodge real good. Real good. They're hard to rope. That's what the word is, a slip knot. It means to snare with a lasso. They had lassos back then. All right? To snare with a lasso. It also is used in a couple of places in Greek writings of being hung by the neck until dead. Joaquin Marietta. How many of you have heard of Joaquin Marietta? Joaquin Marietta, there were 5 Joaquin Mariettas. Or 4 Joaquin Mariettas and 1 Joaquin Valenzuela. They were Spanish people that came to this area up at San Jose and everything. Well, the United States annexed, basically they stole California. If you really want to get down to real history, it was stolen. Lebec, Peter Lebec. You know what, Lebec, California? You ever been up to Lebec? Peter Lebec, when they stole Texas from Mexico, they sent Peter Lebec out here to get a revolution going in California so they could steal California. They were going to get 2 states at once, big places. Peter Lebec came out here, and that grizzly bear ate him up there, you know, and it killed him up there at Lebec. I saw that old tree where it had the sign up there, Peter Lebec, on it a long time ago, about 50, 60 years ago. It was still there. Joaquin Marietta, El Famoso, the Patriot, they called him. He lived up there by San Jose, and he had a little gambling blue tent where he gambled, and he had a lot of mining claims. But the United States government, they said that an Indian and a Mexican didn't have any rights. If you were a Mexican from Mexico, if he had to be at least 1/4 Indian, and an Indian didn't have any rights. If an Indian wasn't on a mission slave plantation, he was a dead man. Had no rights at all. If you were 1/4 Indian, you had no rights in California. If you were half black, you could own property, do whatever. But if you were 1/4 Indian, you were nothing. Well, Joaquin Marietta was Spanish. He was about 6'4". He had blonde hair and blue eyes. He was from Spain. And his brothers, he had one dark-haired one. There was only one dark-haired and with brown eyes. All the rest of them were blonde, hair, as they say it. Did I say that right? Okay. Blonde and blue eyes. Anyway, they raped his wife one night, the miners. They took all of his money. You couldn't go to a court of law and do anything, and he was a real good guy up there. Everybody loved him, and the sheriff knew him very well. They raped his wife and abused his mother, and they took his brother and roped him by the neck, lassoed, epibalo, and pulled him up in a tree and watched him strangled to death. And they took Joaquin Marietta. Both of them's name were Joaquin Marietta. They had different middle names. One like Joaquin Juan, Joaquin something or other, whatever. Marietta. They had different middle names. Same front name, same last name. They took him and they tied him to a tree and just cut him to pieces with a black snake whip. But they left him alive. And he told them, you better kill me, or I'll kill every one of you for what you've done here today. He went to the sheriff and reported it, and the sheriff says, I can't bring any charges against these. You're Mexican, and they're white citizens. You can't make any charges. My family back in Oklahoma, when they killed my great-grandfather in 1905, there were no charges brought against the white man that shot him down, because you couldn't bring any charges. An Indian couldn't bring charges against a white man. And that's what happened here. Joaquin Marietta was taking wild horses all over the San Joaquin Valley. This place is full of wild Mustangs, by the way. And this was in the 1850s. And they'd take about 300 to 600 wild horses at a time, and they would camp along different places. The one place they were camped is right in my yard where I live. Right out there, Rebecca. You've been there. How many of you been to my place? Corey, you've been there? a lot of you been there. Right out there in the back, there was a flowing spring with good water. Most of the water was stagnant in this valley, but right there they had good water and good grass. And he'd take the horses and get them down this far. They'd follow. Buena Vista Lake was real big at that time, and they'd follow around the edge of it, and then they'd come right to where we are, and they'd get ready to go over and take the horses and let them rest one more time at Cucamonga, which is San Bernardino now. And then they'd take them to Sonora, Mexico, and sell them for $100 a piece back then. Well, the Zorro legend came from that. That's where Zorro came from. That was the Zorro legend. And Three-Fingered Jack, Manuel Duarte, he was a bad guy. They say that Joaquin Murrieta shot his finger off when he was getting ready to pull the trigger too often. And that's why they called him Three-Fingered Jack. Anyway, all of those people, all of the miners that abused him and abused his wife lived. His brother was dead. And he had 3 other brothers here named Joaquin Murrieta. And 2 other brothers. 1 cousin, 1 brother. One of them was Joaquin Juan Murrieta and then Martin Murrieta. All of these were big people. Big, blue-eyed, blonde-haired people. And he could speak English so well they couldn't tell him from a white man. That's why he got away so long, because they couldn't tell him from a white man. He could speak Spanish fluently, French fluently, and English fluently. He would come all the way down through here and he'd run all over, but he went out and he lassoed every man and drug him to death by hanging him and drug him along the ground. He what drug hung them, this Epibalo. He would lasso them around the neck and wrap his lariat around the saddle horn and take off and drug them to death. That happened. He killed but about 2 of them, and they took off for points unknown. But that's where the Joaquin Murrieta, that's where the Zorro legend came from. They hired Harry Love, which was a detective, state, what they call this California, like the Texas Rangers, this California Rangers. And they hired him to kill this bunch of outlaws. Actually, California was the outlaws. These people got mad, and this was retribution. This was karma. But they didn't look at it that way because he started stealing people's horses. But where he went along and wherever they treated him well, he rode into a place up there by Tulare one time and rode into a man's place, and his horse was just wore out. He had a good horse. He had 2 horses that he rode, El Tigre and Mozo. Mozo was 18.5 hand, big, tall, 18.5 hand wild Mustang. And El Tigre was a buckskin. And the buckskins are tough, aren't they, Dakota? Those are the 2 horses that he rode. He could get away one. But he was riding another horse because those other ones were wore out. And he drove into this ranch up there by Tulare, and he went in and he had dinner with the man because everybody was hospitable back then. And he said, I need a good saddle horse. I'll pay you whatever you want for it. He said, I got a good horse out there, but he's wore out. He said, I'll trade you that horse and give you whatever you want for any. He said, my horses aren't for sale. In the morning, before daylight, he got up and he went outside, and there Joaquin Murrieta's horse was with a bag of gold coins underneath his neck. I think he'd given him like $600 for that horse and thanked him for the hospitality. But he needed a horse. He hung a lot of those rascals, and he roped a lot of horses too, and they herded them all up and down this valley. To lasso a slip knot, that's the word epibalo there, but for the good figure, good shape. Good figure, good shape. And attention to, or attention upon, sitting beside the Lord undistractedly. Brother Becca, will you run up here and read that for me real quick? The last 2 verses, I think. She's got a fan club out there too.
I already read 34.
Okay.
Okay. Now I say this for your own welfare and profit, not to put a halter of restraint upon you, but to promote what is seemly and in good order, and to secure your undistracted and undivided devotion to the Lord.
All right. Thank you. Put a halter, put a slip knot around you. What does the word Rebecca mean in Hebrew? Huh? It means to lasso or to halter. Rebecca was so beautiful that they gave her the name Rebecca, which meant to lasso someone, to just absolutely, to tie them up with her beauty. They were lassoed and they were hog-tied by her beauty. All right. That's the word there too. Epibalo. That means to use the lariat on. 736. A day, tis, aske monain, epi, tain, parathanon, autu, nomise, yon, a, hiparakmos, kai, hutos, aphele, geneste, ho, thele, poieto, uk, hamartane, game tosan, hos, de, this is a long sentence, isn't it? Estaken, en, te, cardia, autu, edraos, me, ekon, anagkain, exousion, de, ekes, peri, tu, idiou, thelamatos, kai, tutos, or tuto, kekerken. All right. I read too far. But since anyone to act shamefully toward the virgin of him, he may think, or he thinks, if she is past the bloom of youth, past the bloom of youth, and thusly ought to be what he wishes, allow or let him do, not he sins, let them marry. All right, now, in the, got to turn this antique over. Back in the Roman and the Greek culture, and many times in the Middle East today, Dakota, you have friends that are Muslim faith that you go to school with. Now, do they make their own minds about who they're going to marry? No, they don't. They came over to this country, they still do exactly like they did in the Middle East or in India or wherever. All right? Now, there was a young lady in a story called Adramaki, and it's translated, it says in this ancient inscription about marriage, my marriage is not my affair. It's my Father's care. It is not for me to worry about or to decide. It's for my Father to decide. I'm not going to worry about who I'm going to marry. It's my daddy's job. That's what she said back then. That's my daddy's job. Now, I'm going to tell you something. We don't do things like that here, do we? But if we did, maybe it might be better. I don't know. Sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes you listen to mom or daddy, it's not good. But right here, that's the way it was. Most of the time, your parents aren't going to aim you the wrong direction, are they? Brother Bill, when your daughters were looking for husbands, you were looked at them with a microscope, didn't you?
You know, I did, but didn't do me any good.
You live in America, didn't you? All right. The virgin there. Now, this woman is a virgin. Christian girls ought to be virgins when they get married. They ought to be virgins. That's just the way it is. And he may think, reason, no miso, if she is past the bloom of age, if she's 13 or 14 years old, she's an old maid. Now, we know that back in those days. Back when Rebecca was brought to Isaac, how many of you in my Hebrew class? What do the Hebrew scholars, the rabbis, say about her age back then? How old was she, Brother Roger?
Anywhere from 4 to 9.
4 to 9 years old. Probably at least 9, because she went out there and hauled the water for those camels. She was a girl, and if you were close to 10 years old, you were marriageable. If you got up 14, 15, she's an old maid. All right, now this is it, okay? If she's already 15, 16 years old and she got married now, well, forget it. Nobody's interested in her so far, forget it. Just let her fly, you know. Just think about that today. How old's your youngest daughter there, Brother Donnie? 11 years old. Boy, I'm telling you what, they would have been courting her back in those days. They'd have been courting her. That makes you scared, doesn't it? It's scary. And the reason why they asked so much money for their hand was to know that they were wealthy enough to take care of them, for one thing, and that they cared enough for them to invest that much money in them. And she better be a virgin, or the deal's off. As simple as that. And thusly he ought to be what he wishes, allow him to do or not to do. He sins, not he sins. Let them marry. Now, if she's still a marriageable age and not beyond the blossom of her, not an old maid, let him go ahead and let her get married. If he lets her get married, it's not a sin. Okay? Not a sin. 737, which we already read part of that. And let's read the other side, 37b. En te idia cardia, terrain, tain, hiaton, parthenon, kalos poiese. But who he has stood in the heart of him firm, not having agony or necessity, authority, but he has concerning of the own thelematos. What's the word thelematos mean? Thelematos. You remember what that means? That's in Ephesians, the first chapter. Thelematos is all over there. Thelematos means spiritual activating force. It means your wishes or your will, your volition. But thelematos has got more than that. What makes a saved person think and do like they do? What makes you act like you do? Spirit God that's in you. Okay? Spiritual activating force. And thus he has decided in his own heart to keep himself the virgin. Good he shall do. Good he shall do. He shall do. Good. Penny, you want to run up here and read that for me? Verse 36 and 37. 36 and verse 37. We'll let Rebecca rest this time. 36 and 37.
But if any man thinks that he is not acting properly toward and in regard to his virgin, that he is preparing disgrace for her or incurring reproach, in case she is passing the bloom of her youth, and if there is need for it, let him do what to him seems right. He does not sin, let them marry. But whoever is firmly established in his heart, strong in mind and purpose, not being forced by necessity, but having control over his own will and desire, and has resolved this in his heart to keep his own virginity, he is doing well.
Thank you, Penny. Penelope. That's a pretty name. He is, if he's not forced by money, if he doesn't need to sell her, if he doesn't need money, if the man maybe has this daughter and maybe he's in debt or something, and he may have to sell his daughter in marriage to cover his losses or whatever. If he doesn't have this loss, if he doesn't have to sell her to acquire wealth to keep on living, let him go ahead and keep her at home. That's what it's talking about. It doesn't work that way today. I see that puzzled look on your Rebecca. It doesn't work like that today. Huh? You like that idea, Brother Bill? 738. You had a fortune, you just didn't know it. Yeah. Rebecca's got one pretty girl. She's got one. Now, see, that would be an asset to an Oriental house. Boy, there's money. That's money in the bank right there. I just got to train her up right, teach her how to cook and everything else. I always told Dakota she was worth $50,000 because I taught her how to cook. Right? Hoste, Kai, Ho, Nomizon, Gamizon, that is. Tain, Hiauton, Parthenon, Kalos, Poye, Kai, Ho, Me, Gamizon, Creson, Poiese. So as also the one marrying the himself virgin, good. He does. And the not marrying better, he will do. In other words, what Paul's saying here, all the way through these verses, is the whole problem of whether a girl gets married or not. It was not left up to the girl, it's left up to the father. That's what he's talking about. If you wanted a biblical foundation for the man taking care of what his daughter gets married or where she gets married or not, here is the foundation of it. It wouldn't work in this country, I can just tell you that right now. But there it is. Okay? And Paul also said, it's my opinion, if he lets her get married, it's good. But if he doesn't, it's better yet. 739. Here are some, we'll do these two verses. I know I'm running over just a little bit. Gaine, Didate, F, Hoson, Chronon, Ze, Ho, Aner, Autes, Eon, De, Koi, Methe, Ho, Aner, Eleuthera, Eston, Ho, Thele, Gamethene, Monon, En, Kyrio. Young people, old people, all people. Wife, having been bound for as long time, a season, time there, that's time, as she may live, the husband of her. But if he falls asleep in death, the husband free she is to whom she wishes to marry, only in the Lord. Now it says here that if you're a child of God, don't marry anybody that's not saved. If you want to bring troubles on your head, girls, marry a lost man. Boys, marry a lost girl. That's right. You want to have troubles, you marry a lost person. And I'm going to tell you something. They may say that they believe just like you do. But if you marry them and they don't, you got trouble from now on until they get saved and converted. I can tell you that from first-hand experience. I can guarantee you that for sure. They may say to you that they're saved. They may say they believe just like you believe. But you watch them before you marry them. You watch what kind of habits they have. That's very important. Only marry those that are believers like you are. Because you're stuck with them afterwards, unless they try to kill you or something. I won't have you any longer. A saved person has no business marrying a lost person. It's sin, and that's outside of God's will. If you marry a lost person, their mother and father are lost, you will have trouble with lost people. It is good if you marry somebody that is saved and sound in the Word. Sound. 7 and verse 40. Makari thera. De, Eston, Eon, Hutos, Mene, Kata, Tain, Emain, Nomain, Doko, De, Kago, Numa, Theu, Akain. Happier, happy-minded, but happy-minded she is if in this way or in this manner she may remain according to my opinion. Paul keeps saying my opinion. This is not direct revelation from God, but it is Paul's opinion if you do this. So many churches start laying down rules for marriage and divorce and all this kind of stuff, and they don't read it rightly. Read what Paul's saying. My opinion I judge. Moreover, I also the Spirit of God to have. I have the Spirit of God. This is my spiritual guidance to you. All right? But he keeps repeating, this is not revelation. This is not revelation. This is not canon, is what he said. This is not canon. Brother, Rebecca, you want to come up here and finish this back off? I'll turn you loose on the world out there, and you can go out and do something eternal. And I hope to see you in the next class, maybe, if the Lord gives me strength.
A wife is bound to her husband by law as long as he lives. If the husband dies, she is free to be married to whom she will, only provided that he too is in the Lord. But in my opinion, a widow is happier, more blessed, and to be envied if she does not remarry. And also, I think I have the Spirit of God.
Thank you. All right. Well, we'll be in 8 and verse 1 next week. Let's have a word of prayer, and I'll turn you loose on the world. Brother Dick, would you come up here and dismiss us in prayer, please, brother?
Father, we thank you for this time looking at your word. We thank you for Brother Jim and the wisdom that he imparts to us. We do pray for his health and his many more years for him. We just pray that these problems that he has physically would be taken care of by you, and he'd be able to continue ministering to all of us the way that he does. We do ask you, Father, to open opportunities for us to share our faith with others as we go about our daily activities. We pray this in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, brother.